Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life, that there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. It is this feeling that has brought you to me. The Matrix is everywhere. It is all around us. Even now, in this very room. You can see it when you look out your window or when you turn on your television. You can feel it when you go to work, when you go to church, when you pay your taxes. It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth.
What truth?
That you are a slave, Neo. Like everyone else, you were born into bondage, born into a prison that you cannot smell or taste or touch. A prison for your mind.
The allegory of the Matrix is actually about our world being under complete control. It's about the control system that is already in place in our world that we're already living in. And it's controlled by hidden forces or occult forces. It is an allegory about how this planet is being turned into a prison society, and that we're already really living in that prison society and are largely unaware of that fact, or at least the bulk of humanity is unaware of that fact. The people in this room are most certainly aware of it. But the good news about the Matrix, of the allegory of the Matrix trilogy, is that it also shows us the key. It shows us how we can get out of that prison society that has been built up all around us. So, each movie answers a different question. The first movie answers the question, what is the Matrix? When they're talking about, quote-unquote, the Matrix, what is that? What do they mean by that? And that's what the entire first movie gets into. The second movie answers the question, why are we in the Matrix? What are the causal factors that led to this condition? And I would suggest that this is why the second movie is wildly unpopular in comparison to the first movie. For people who can see the control system, at least, and are not resistant to at least seeing the controls in place in our world, they're still very resistant to understanding why that control system is in place and what's perpetuating it. And most unpopular of all is the third film, because the third film answers the question, how do we get out of the Matrix? And that's the information that people are actually the most resistant to hearing, because that involves deep internal change in a person's thoughts, emotions, and actions. And that's the thing that they're the most resistant to. So that's why I would suggest the second and third movie did not nearly gain the traction of the first one. So let's start in and take a look at the first movie, which answers the question, what is the Matrix? The film begins in a hotel called the Heart of the City. So it's starting at the heart. This is very highly symbolic, as we will see, because one of the things people miss in this movie is that it begins and ends in the same place, in the heart. Okay? It actually comes around full circle, and Neo actually ends up in this building at the end of the film. Okay? So every movie, every one of the movies also begins with Trinity, the main female lead, played by Carrie-Anne Moss, in distress, in severe distress of some kind. Each movie starts with her under attack or in distress, okay? Because she represents the feminine force that is in distress in our world, okay? She's under attack by agents at the beginning of the first film. Agents of the state are what these agents in the Matrix represent. They represent people who are doing the bidding of the control system. Okay, the main hero of the film, played by Keanu Reeves, is Thomas Anderson. who was a software engineer. Okay, now, the Matrix is all an allegory dealing with software jargon, computer jargon. Okay, software, hardware, internet, things like that. So, another thing a lot of people miss is that at the beginning of every film, the first time you ever see the main character, he is asleep. Every film. Okay? And this is suggestive. This is suggestive that we are asleep because Thomas Anderson represents the everyman. He is us. Okay? He represents our position as the average human being trapped in the Matrix and asleep. Okay? Not having awoken yet. And he receives an encrypted message on his computer that says, "Wake up, Neo." See, that's his hacker name, Neo. We'll get into what that represents, the name. The Matrix has you. It owns you. Okay? And follow the white rabbit is the advice he's given. And that's suggestive, of course, Lewis Carroll's Through the Looking Glass, which is also about a reality that is hidden from our view. So, his apartment is room 101. Now, this is a direct reference to 1984, the book by George Orwell. And room 101 in that film represents the place where your deepest fears are contained, that you have to go into. The protagonist of that movie had to go into near the end of the book, the book, 1984 had to go into. And, you know, unfortunately that movie has a very dark ending where The Matrix actually has a quite hopeful ending. But room 101 represents fear, and you see the one eye symbolism as well here, with the character peeking out fearfully through the door. This is a scene where a bunch of other hacker types come to his house to take some code, to take some stolen information from Neo, who he has paid a couple $1,000s for at the beginning of the film. Now, the money stash that he uses is a book. It's a hollowed out book. But this book is actually what inspired the film. Okay? It's a real book. It's by Jean Baudrillard. Okay? And it's called Simulacra and Simulation. And it is a book about how we are lost in the map and we are not even seeing the territory for what it is. It's a book about how our perceptions are completely misguided and we are misled into a dream world. And we're believing that the symbols and the map are the real world, and we're not even really paying attention to the real world. We're not paying attention to nature at all. Okay? So that's what that book is all about. I suggest people check it out because it is really, along with some other spiritual teaching from different traditions, what the information that underlies the Matrix films. Now, the people who show up to give him the money, one of their girlfriends has this white rabbit on her shoulder. So you see synchronicity, the idea of synchronicity being injected into the film. He was just told, follow the white rabbit, a white rabbit appears. He decides to go along with that, stepping into the stream of synchronicity, and that leads him to a club where he meets Trinity, where Neo, Thomas Anderson, meets Trinity. Now, he never met her before, but he was aware of her reputation. Here's part of the conversation that takes place. Trinity says, I know why you're here, Neo. You're looking for him. I know because I was once looking for the same thing. And when he found me, he told me I wasn't really looking for him. I was looking for an answer. It's the question that drives us mad. It's the question that brought you here. You know the question just as I did. And Neo replies, what is the Matrix? That is the question that we're going to get an answer to. Trinity says, the answer is out there, Neo. It's looking for you, and it will find you if you want it to. So this is suggestive that the desire for truth must be present if we're going to find answers. And the person she's referring to, of course, is Morpheus, who we'll get to in a moment. Well, Morpheus represents the truth teller. He represents the one who is revealing the truth and helping to bring people out of the Matrix. So, the next slide is from Thomas Anderson's place of employment, which is a software company, and his boss, Reinhardt, says to him that he has a problem with authority, because that's what this movie is about. Authority being projected onto us and us believing in it, us accepting the notion that there's such a thing as authority in human form. And he says, I'll read part of the dialogue. He says, "You have a problem with authority, Mr. Anderson. You believe that you are special, that somehow the rules don't apply to you. Obviously, you're mistaken. This company is one of the top software companies in the world because every single employee understands that they are part of a whole." So he's emphasizing the concept of collectivism, of giving yourself over to the collective instead of expressing your uniqueness and individuality. And he concludes by saying, thus, if an employee has a problem, the company has a problem. So, agents of the state show up to question Neo, and he doesn't know why they're there. So he's on the phone with Morpheus, and Morpheus says to him, "I have been looking for you. I don't know if you're ready to see what I want to show you," suggesting that most people aren't ready. They're resistant. They don't want to see the truth. Okay? He says, "But unfortunately, you and I have run out of time." And that's where we're at. We're at the time where it's no longer time to sugarcoat this information. We have to get it out there whether people are ready to hear it or not. So these agents of the state come for Neo, doesn't know why they want him, and they bring him to a holding center to interrogate him. So they're trying to inject him with fear and, bully him and, basically make him afraid. And one of the strangest scenes in the movie, one of the agents is able to actually make his lips melt together and silence him. And this suggests that what the agents of the state really want is to silence us. They don't want us speaking out. They want us afraid and they want us quiet. Afraid and quiet. And that will be playing into their hands. We have to speak up now more than ever. Also, they bug him. They hold him down and they put an electronic bug in his navel. Okay? And what this is suggested of is they're trying to keep you in fear that they're always listening to you. Oh, I can't post this on Facebook, it's under surveillance. I can't talk about this on the internet, they'll listen to what I'm saying. Well, shed all of that fear. Come out, speak the truth. If you're standing in the truth, nothing's ultimately going to stand in your way. I want the agents of the state to hear what I have to say, because maybe they'll learn something. All right? So that fear needs to be shed. So he finally meets Morpheus. Again, Morpheus in Greek mythology represents the god of dreams. He is revealing the dream. That's what Morpheus actually means. Okay? And this is a famous meeting between Morpheus, Trinity, and Neo. And Trinity brings them together. Trinity, who represents our emotions, brings our action, which is the will, which is what Neo represents, into alignment with thought, which is what Morpheus represents. So let's take a look at these three characters and what they really represent allegorically. They are different aspects of our consciousness, of the expression of our consciousness. And Neo represents, well, I'll start with Morpheus. Our consciousness, the expression of our consciousness, is composed of three modalities or dynamics: our thoughts, our emotions, and our actions. These are the three ways we express our consciousness. Morpheus represents the mind. He is the thoughts aspect of consciousness. So he is the mind. He is our intelligence. When we use the mind, we're gaining knowledge. We're making a connection with truth. That's what Morpheus represents. That which is going to show us the truth. Okay? Trinity is the spirit. She is the sacred feminine, the heart, our compassion, love energy. That's what she represents. And again, she acts as the bridge between the two. The heart is the bridge between our mind and our will. The heart is the center. Our actions is represented by Neo. He is the will. He represents courage. He represents the exercise of conscience, doing that which we know to be right. And he represents our desire for freedom, for true freedom. Okay? So he is the will. When they meet, finally, when the thoughts reach out to the actions, to the will, and they finally meet in the Lafayette Hotel, Morpheus presents Neo with a choice, and here's how the dialogue goes. Morpheus says, "You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life. that there is something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it is there, like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. It is this feeling that has brought you to me. Do you know what I'm talking about? And Neo replies, the Matrix. Morpheus says, do you want to know what it is? Do you want to know what the Matrix is? The Matrix is everywhere. It's all around us, even now in this very room. You can see it when you look out your window, when you go to church. When you turn on your television. You can feel it when you go to work, when you go to church, when you pay your taxes. It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth. And Neo asks, what truth? And Morpheus replies, that you are a slave, Neo. Yes. Like everyone else, you were born into bondage. Born into a prison that you can't taste or smell or taste or touch. A prison for your mind. Unfortunately, no one can be told what the Matrix is. You have to see it for yourself. So this is the idea that we have to have our mind open enough to see the system of control that is all around us. No one can really explain it to us. We have to be open-minded enough to see it for ourselves. He says, this is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill and the story ends here. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. If you take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Another reference to Through the Looking Glass. And this is suggestive that the truth, to understand the truth, is a choice that only we can make. And the frequencies represented by the two colored pills are something that is a part of the code of this allegory. See, blue frequencies are about passing. It's about passive energy, okay? And that means if you don't want the truth, you would be shifting toward the blue frequency field. Red is about pushing forward and engaging the will and going wherever the truth leads, okay? It's the masculine aspect, which is what we have to engage when it comes to the acceptance of the truth. We have to employ will to understand what is really going on in our world. So that's why he has to take the red pill and not take the blue pill. He has to accept the truth and move forward with it, to go where it leads as opposed to pass on. That's what that represents. Okay, so of course the main character, our hero, Neo, takes the red pill. Before he takes the red pill, Morpheus finally says, remember, all I'm offering is the truth, suggesting that it is not going to be a pleasant experience, because understanding the truth isn't a pleasant experience. Okay? Now the movie starts moving very fast from the point where he takes the red pill. And after he takes it, the regular world around him dissolves, it goes away, okay? And he wakes up in a horror-filled world. And that's what learning the truth is like. All of your illusions that you previously believed are falling away, and now you're waking up to the horror of our reality, okay? He wakes up in a pod of like gelatinous goo, connected with all kinds of tubes and machines all in his flesh. And this is about that the system has its hooks in us. It has its hooks in every part of us. And we need to shed those hooks. We need to purge ourselves of them. Okay? And when he looks around, for as far as the eye can see in every direction, there's human beings in these pods. Still completely unconscious and in this total machine system that's feeding off of their energy. Okay? When he looks down, it's as far as the eye can see, like a gigantic tower. You can't even see the bottom. You can't even see the top. It seemingly extends forever. And this is the horror of our situation, that we live in a world of people who are still connected to no aspect of reality whatsoever. They still completely engage in, accept and believe the illusion that is projected at them by the mainstream media, the government, religion, etc. People are not in connection with truth. They're in connection with fantasy land. And they are all around us for as far as the eye can see. That is our actual situation. So the characters who are on Morpheus' ship finally rescue Neo. He gets ejected out a waste shaft, and he's picked up and he is brought on board the hovercraft of Morpheus and the other characters. the hovercraft is called the Nebuchadnezzar. And they bring him on board this hovercraft, and he's a wreck. They have to rebuild his muscles, because he's never actually really moved his own muscles. He's lived in this pod. He's been grown like a plant instead of lived his life like a human being. And in a pod his whole life, so his muscles have atrophied. This represents the weakness that we're in when we first start waking up, when we first start coming out of illusion. Okay? That we have to build ourselves back up, because it's like, you know, throwing someone a weight whose muscles have atrophied. They're not going to be able to catch it. They're not going to be strong. You know, when they're first, you know, starting to use their muscles, you know, they're just, you know, getting their legs under them. So it has to be taken slow in a stepwise progression to give people information when they're first coming out of the matrix. So he asks the question at one point when they're doing this work on his body, why do my eyes hurt? And Morpheus answers, because you've never used them before. So he's telling him, you've never seen the world for what it really is. You've never really opened your eyes. You've never really used your own eyes. You know, you've been buying into the illusions all around you, and you've never seen the world as it really is for yourself. Okay? So that's what that part represents. So Morpheus explains to him that they're on a hovercraft, and they have computer technology there that allows them to jack into the matrix and broadcast a pirate signal, which allows them to project their consciousness into the machine's programming. We'll understand what that is as we get into the story of what happened on the Earth in the movie. Okay? But basically, these are the machines that they jack into the matrix through. And here you see them, he's putting Neo into one of these machines, and he's going to show him one of their programs that they call the construct, which is their loading and training program. Okay? So this is the construct that he takes him into, and they can project any kind of scenario that they want for training or learning purposes. And it's, you know, it makes the mind experience this as if it were real, but they're actually in a computer-generated reality. So Morpheus says, when Neo is surprised and he says, this isn't real, Morpheus replies and he says, what is real? If you're talking about what you can feel, smell, taste, and see, then real is simply electrical signals interpreted by your brain. This is the world that you know now. The world as it was at the end of the 20th century. It exists now only as part of a neural interactive simulation that we call the Matrix. You have been living in a dream world, Neo. So in other words, the reality that he thinks is present is gone. The machines have taken over the world. Okay? And the Matrix, his former life as a software engineer, was all a projection by the machine. It wasn't the real world. The machines were projecting that reality for him to stay alive and keep engaging his mind so that they could be fed energy through that mental energy and physical energy of the body, of the person in the pod. Okay? And this is the world as it really is. It's devastated. And this is suggested that our world is devastated. Our world is completely devastated. Truth is devastated. Nature is devastated. Okay? Ourselves are devastated. We are destroyed as a people. And there's just a wasteland. And, you know, the machines basically are running the show. And what that suggests is machine consciousness is running the show. So humans are no longer born as he describes it. They are now grown in these pods. And these are harvesting machines. These big, huge octopus-like creatures are harvesting human beings that are all in each one of these little pods. And this is how they live from their birth. They're in these machines and they feed the system. They actually give their energy to the system. This is about us feeding the system through our compliance with it. So Morpheus says that the AI that took over the world was a singular consciousness that spawned an entire race of machines. He refers to it as a consciousness. Again, it's machine consciousness. It is intellect with it completely divorced from any wisdom. It is intellect completely divorced from any true care or heart or compassion. That's the machine world. The world of I don't care as long as I get mine. That's the matrix that we're living in. That's the consciousness that fuels that system of control. Okay? So, he says, the machines have found all the energy they will ever need, meaning human beings. They eat us, they feed on us. He says there are fields, endless fields, where human beings are no longer born, they are grown. For the longest time, I wouldn't believe it myself. And then I saw the fields with my own eyes. Standing there facing the pure, horrifying precision of it all, I came to realize the obviousness of the truth. And here's where we get the answer to the question of the first movie. Morpheus answers the question himself. He says, what is the matrix? Control. Control is what the matrix is. And the system that we're living in is all about control. A police state society. Total lockdown society coming in. Brought on by keeping people in a completely illusory, dumbed down condition from the moment that they are born. And that's what the machine consciousness is all about, and keeping people in a completely asleep condition from the moment that we're born is like. He answers the question. There it is. What is the matrix? Control. The matrix is a dream world built to keep us under control in order to change a human being into this. And he holds up a battery. Because we are their fuel through our consent to this system of control that has been built up. I would suggest that what the matrix ultimately is this. It's not just control, it's a specific kind of control. The matrix is mind control. This is where the real matrix is operating. It's operating in the realm of mind to keep people in a dreamlike state, in a state of unconsciousness, so that they cannot really see what's going on in our reality and just accept the projected version of reality at face value. Neo is horrified by this and immediately tries to reject it. Of course, when people are first waking up to the nature of our reality, they're very angry. And they want to lash out at who's telling them the truth. They don't want to hear it. So he says, no, I don't believe it. It's not possible. And Morpheus again responds, I didn't say it would be easy. I just said it would be the truth. That's all he was ever offering him. He wasn't telling him you're going to wake up to a wonderful fantasy land. You're going to wake up to a wonderful world. You know, you're going to wake up and see the truth for what it is. A world of horror that it's our responsibility to change. Okay? So he hits him with even harder information after that, which he's even less prepared to handle. He says, Neo asks him, I can't go back, can I? And he says, no. But if you could, would you really want to? You know, who wants to go back into the illusion world after they see the world as it is, even though it's horrible? You know, most people don't make that decision. They want to at least know what the truth is. And he says, we never free a mind once it reaches a certain age. It's dangerous, and the mind has trouble letting go, which you can see in the world with people who have developed real attachments to the system. It's very difficult for them to let go of it. He says, I did what I did because I had to. When the Matrix was first built, there was a man born inside, which we call the One. Morpheus calls him the One, who had the ability to change whatever he wanted, to make the Matrix as he saw, remake the Matrix as he saw fit. It was he who freed the first of us and taught us the truth. As long as the Matrix exists, human beings will never be free. And what was the Matrix? Control. So substitute the word, the allegory, put it in there. As long as the Matrix exists, human beings will never be free. What is the Matrix? Control. As long as the desire to control exists, you will never be free, ever. So, he says, after he died, meaning the One, his return was prophesied. And it was prophesied that his coming would hail the destruction of the Matrix, the destruction of the world of control. And that the war between us and the machines would end, bringing peace to our people, bringing freedom to our people. He says, that is why there are those of us who have spent our entire lives searching the Matrix looking for him. I did what I did because I believe that search is over, referring to Neo. So he just drops onto Neo that he believes that this guy is the savior of humanity, that he's the savior of the world. He just woke up, he's newly woken up to the reality that's all around him, and he's still horrified by it. And now this guy just hit him with the fact that he's the savior, or so Morpheus believes. Okay? So let's continue. Morpheus then Okay, let's look at what the name Neo really means, allegorically. Neo represents our neocortex, the higher part of the brain, and the newest part of the brain in evolutionary terms. Neo is a Latin prefix meaning new. Okay? It's also an anagram for the word one. You just rearrange the letters of Neo and you get one. So what Neo actually represents, that is going to be our savior, is balancing the left and right brain hemispheres, okay, and bringing the entire brain complex together as one, ultimately bringing consciousness together as one. That can't be done unless it can be done physiologically. Then we can do it with higher consciousness. But if the brain is in a state of imbalance toward the left hemisphere or the right hemisphere, we're not in higher consciousness. We're in left brain consciousness is pure machine consciousness, and right brain consciousness is pure slave consciousness. Okay? That's just accepting whatever happens to you without doing anything. Total passivity, and this is total, male action drive that has no compassion in it. Only when we bridge these two in conjunction with the heart do we really wake up to our higher selves. Okay, so what Neo represents is this occult or this esoteric concept of the new man, the being that we need to give birth to by working upon ourselves and our consciousness. All right, and bringing our thoughts, our emotions, and our actions into alignment once we have balanced these hemispheres of the brain. It is the enlightened or illuminated man. It's a new being, a new species, so to speak. It's the next stage of human evolutionary development, which happens in consciousness, not physically. It happens here and here. That's where that evolution takes place. So that's what ultimately Neo represents. And again, that is the Savior. That is our Savior. That's what we need to do. That's where we need to go if we're going to really create any lasting positive change in our reality. This is the famous fight scene. Morpheus takes Neo into their training construct and begins to train him, okay, to try to free his mind. All right? And again, this scene is where I got the phrase "free your mind" from. The conference is named directly after this movie from this scene in The Matrix. Okay? So he says, he's fighting, Neo is fighting Morpheus, and he cannot beat him. He's given all the programs for jujitsu and other forms of kung fu, and he knows all the forms and the techniques, but he still can't beat Morpheus, who is older and seemingly weaker body-wise. He's in better shape as a physical specimen. Neo is, but he can't beat him. And he's like, why do you think you can't beat me? And he says, do you believe that me being any stronger or faster here has anything to do with my muscles in this place, meaning the construct? So he's trying to explain to him this is all about being strong here in the mind. That's where, when we start to take action in this realm, that our strength has to reside. And he says, I am trying to free your mind, Neo, but I can only show you the door. You are the one that has to walk through it. So, you could lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. You could show someone the truth, but you can't make them accept it. That's what he's saying. He's saying you have to let it all go. Fear has to be let go. Doubt has to be let go. Disbelief. Free your mind. He says, you're the one who has to walk through the door, suggesting that ultimately only the person themselves creates transformation. Transformation is created within, and it's done according to our accepting the truth and then putting it into practice in our lives. So you're the one who has to do it. He shows them another training program, which they call the JUMP program. And this is about having faith in yourself. All right? He starts him on this building, and he's telling him you need to jump to that other building across an entire city street. And this is obviously impossible in the, quote, real world, but he's trying to train his mind out of its weakness and build up confidence and build up belief in oneself. So Morpheus makes the jump because he's already at that level of consciousness, and he asks him to follow. And of course, Neo isn't at that level of awareness yet, and so he plummets into the street and the street doesn't kill him. It acts as like a trampoline, but he kind of is a little bit injured. He spits up a little bit of blood, and and he says in this, if you're after coming out of that program spitting up some blood, he says if you're killed in the Matrix, that means that you die here. And Morpheus simply responds, the body cannot live without the mind. So ultimately, the mind is what's creating our projections in the real world. So, continuing, he then shows them another training program that is all about the agents of the system and how they're really all around us. And the agents can be anybody within the system, because the system is what people are attached to. Okay? So they're not willing to follow the truth. They're not willing to do the right thing. They're going to do whatever the system commands them to do. So anybody is a potential agent of the control system. Morpheus says the Matrix is a system. That system is our enemy. When you're inside, what do you see? Businessmen, teachers, lawyers, carpenters. The very minds of the people we're trying to save. But until we do, these people are still part of that system, and that makes them our enemy. You have to understand that most of these people are not ready to be unplugged. Many of them are so inured, they are so hopelessly dependent on the system that they will fight to protect it. They will fight to protect their enslavers. They don't want to be free because they've never even understood what the concept of freedom is, let alone practiced it or lived it in their lives. They love being under control. They love being dominated. They love being enslaved. And they want it to stay that way, because it staying that way means ultimately they have no true personal responsibility, the thing that they're really trying to duck more than anything else. So he's trying to explain to them, these people basically love it the way that it is. And many of them aren't ready to see the truth and be unplugged from the mind control system. So he says, were you listening to me, Neo, or were you looking at the woman in the red dress? This is a clear reference to the occult concept of the scarlet woman, and it represents the base desires. It represents staying in ego consciousness, being distracted, having your work put to the back burner due to distractions, things like that. And he explains to him, he tells him, look again, and when Neo turns around to look for the woman in the red dress, it's an agent holding a gun to his head. Okay? So what he's trying to tell him is that agents of the system can be anybody. They can infiltrate anywhere. And he says, this is a training program that's designed to teach you one thing. If you're not one of us, you're one of them. Anyone that we have not unplugged is potentially an agent. Sooner or later, someone is going to have to fight them. Every single man or woman who has ever stood their ground, everyone who has fought an agent has died. But where they have failed, you will succeed, because their strength and their speed are still based in a world that is built on rules. Because of that, they will never be as strong or as fast as you can be. And Neo says to him, what are you trying to tell me? That I can dodge bullets? And Neo says, no. I'm trying to tell you that when you're ready, you won't have to. That this will not have to come to a hot revolution if we can do it in consciousness. If we get to a level of consciousness where we stop holding on to our attachments to this control system, we won't have to do this with a war. We will be able to do it by stepping away from the control system and letting it fall, by refusing to comply, by stopping giving our energy to it, to perpetuate it through our own energy. That's the real solution. And not a single bullet would have to be fired if we can get it done that way. And that's what all of my work is about. 100% of my work is to try to avert that hot revolutionary potential. I don't want to see it come to that. I'll be ready if it does come to that, guaranteed. But that's not what I really want to see happen. Otherwise, if I did want to see that happen, I would shut my mouth and never say a word. All of my work is to try to avert that. All of it. Okay? So, the next scene is about Cypher. He's one of the crew on the Nebuchadnezzar, Morpheus' ship. And he is horribly upset by what he has learned in the real world. He hates being unplugged from the Matrix and wants to go back in. He wants to go back asleep. He wants to just live out his life and just feed his base, ego-driven desires, and not pay attention to the truth, and not try to change because he doesn't have the will to do it. He doesn't have the will, the sustained effort and will to continue to press forward. So his question is, why, oh why, didn't I take the blue pill? You know, I woke up to this world of shit, basically. And I hate it, and I don't want to be a part of it anymore. I want to go back to sleep. All right? So his concept is ignorance is bliss, and he makes a deal with the machines that if he gives up Morpheus, if he betrays Morpheus and gives him up to the machines so they can get the codes that they need to attack the last human city of Zion, which we'll talk about later, that his body will then be actually physically reinserted into the Matrix, will be found in the real world and physically reinserted into the Matrix, and he's doing this for a deal that he'll be made someone important and rich, like an actor. We'll take questions afterward. So he's going to betray the crew, okay? And one of the next scenes is the heroes go into the Matrix because Morpheus is taking Neo to see another character known as the Oracle. We'll get to what she represents. She's basically one who makes prophecy about what's going to happen in the future. And in the waiting room to see the Oracle character, he encounters this little boy who we don't know his name. He's just referred to as the boy with the spoon, or Spoon Boy. Okay? And he's bending these spoons with his mind into knots in the Matrix. Because he's woken up. He knows this isn't real. It's a computer projected reality. And he could just, it's mind over matter. It's the will over the physical world. Okay? Reshaping it as he sees fit. And he's trying to teach Neo to do it. And Neo's having a problem with it. And he says, do not, the Spoon Boy says to Neo, do not try to bend the spoon. That's impossible. Instead, only try to realize the truth. And Neo says, what truth? And the Spoon Boy replies, that there is no spoon. Meaning, you know that this is in the Matrix. It's in the world of illusion. Exercise your will over it and change it. Okay? And he says, there is no spoon. He says, only then will you see that it is not the spoon that bends. It is only yourself that bends. Okay? So he's saying, you have to change in here. And in here, if you want to see change reflected in the external reality. It has to happen from within first. Neo finally meets the Oracle character, represented by this black woman, and she is about prophecy, she is about the intuition, and she is about knowing the self. That's what this character represents. She's the deep innermost recesses of the subconscious mind. Okay? And she tells Neo that he should look at the sign behind the door. Behind her door when you walk into the temple of the Oracle. This is a clear reference to the Delphic Oracle in Greece, which was the center of the Hermetic mystery traditions in the ancient world. And this is the main saying, here you see it in Latin, temet noske. In Greek, I don't know what the inscription was off the top of my head, but basically what that means is know thyself. And in the Hermetic tradition, they said, know thyself, and only through knowing thyself will you know the universe and the gods. Okay? So, this is the ultimate command of all mystery tradition teachings. If you don't know the self, you're doomed. If you know the self, then you can create wondrous change in the world. And that's the problem. We don't know ourselves. We've forgotten who we are. And we don't understand how consciousness works to create the reality that we're witnessing and that we're experiencing. And therefore, that's why we continue to create in ignorance. If only when we know the self will we create consciously. So she says, do you know what that means? It's Latin. It means know thyself. Being the one is just like being in love. No one can tell you you're in love. You just know it through and through. She says, sorry, kid. You have the gift, but it looks like you're waiting for something. Maybe in the next life, who knows? So he hasn't built up the confidence. He doesn't know himself enough to know he is the one. He hasn't come to that awakening level yet, that level of consciousness to know he's the one who has to go out and make change. Okay? So she tells him, well, it seems like you're waiting for something. You know, you don't know that you're the one? Well, then I guess you're not. If that's what you believe, then it's true. So he leaves kind of despondent. And back on the ship, Cypher betrays some of the other characters and kills one of them. All right? And he takes over the ship, and he finally betrays Morpheus, and Morpheus falls into the hands of agents within the Matrix before they can actually get out. So here you see Morpheus being tortured and questioned by some of the agents. And Agent Smith says to Morpheus, in reference to the Matrix itself, the system of control, have you ever stared at it and marveled at its beauty, its genius? Billions and billions of people just living out their lives, completely oblivious. Talking about the control system we're living in. He says, did you know that the first Matrix was designed to be a perfect human world? Where none suffered, where everyone would be happy. It was a complete disaster. No one would accept the program. And that's because as a species, human beings define their reality through misery and suffering. This is Smith's dark, poisoned worldview of humanity, of how he sees humanity. And this is part of our poisoned worldview. Why we're still stuck in the Matrix is this is a lot of people's poisoned worldview. He says the perfect world was actually a dream that your primitive cerebrum kept trying to wake up from. You couldn't just accept that things were okay and that, nature was just, ruling the day and you were going along in harmony with it. You weren't trying to fight against it. You weren't trying to fight against the laws of creation. You weren't trying to fight against, your true nature. You were just going along with it. That would have been a perfect world, but you couldn't do that. Your mind kept trying to wake up from it. It wanted something else. It wanted something more. Until it finally would only accept this prison reality, that desire to control. He says that's why the Matrix was redesigned to this, meaning, the modern world, the system of control. So he says, when I tried to classify your species, I realized that you're not actually mammals. Every mammal on this planet instinctively develops a natural equilibrium with the surrounding environment, but humans do not. You move to an area, multiply and multiply, until every natural resource is consumed. The only way you survive is to spread to another area. There is another organism on this planet that follows this same pattern. Do you know what it is? A virus. Human beings are a disease, a cancer of this planet. You are a plague, and we are the cure, meaning the machines, because he's one of the programs in the machine world. So that's his worldview, and that is the dominator's worldview. That is really what they think. That's how they think. And unfortunately, they have infected our minds with that worldview, and many of us think that same way. We're not a virus. If we continue to think that we are, we're falling right into their game, into their hands, and believing in their worldview, which is ultimately going to lead us right into their continued control. So he's trying to break Morpheus' spirit. He's trying to break his mind. So Neo and Trinity go back into the Matrix to lead a rescue attempt of Morpheus. Okay? And this is basically, you're trying to rescue the truth and keep the truth alive. That's what these characters are doing. That's what this represents. Morpheus is the truth. They're trying to rescue, to save the truth from being exterminated, from being broken. Okay? And there's another theme in the movie of going up. We'll return to this later. Going up to a higher level is the solution. They have to take an elevator shaft and they have to take it via an act of faith, via a cable. They have to cut the elevator away from the cable and ride the cable all the way up to the top floor. This is an act of faith that the truth will lead you where you need to go, up to a higher level of awareness. Finally, they rescue Morpheus with a helicopter and a Gatling gun. And the last effort to save Morpheus is a leap. It's a leap of faith. It's using all of the will and suspending yourself, okay? Completely extending yourself to come into harmony with truth. That's what this scene represents. After they save him, Morpheus says, I knew you could do it. I believed in you. He says, sooner or later, you're going to have to realize, just as I realized, that there is a difference between knowing the path and walking the path. That's a powerful, that's a Buddhist philosophy. that there's the path and knowing it. And that's intellectually and, in an intelligence perspective, understanding what is real and understanding what is right. But then there's a big difference because then you have to engage that in the physical reality by using your will to put that knowledge into action. And that's what real wisdom is. And that's what Morpheus is saying to Neo after that scene. There's a difference between knowing the path and walking the path. After this, Neo finally starts to get some courage and resolve. And he's starting to build up confidence in himself. And he's the first person who will not run. He will face the control system head on and take on the agents of the state in the form of Smith. Trinity is looking at this from outside of the Matrix, horrified, saying, "My God, what is he doing?" And Morpheus' response is, he's beginning to believe. He's beginning to believe. Because he's beginning to believe in himself. That he is an agent for change. And he is representing and fighting for and championing the truth. And he's willing to defend that truth against the control system. Okay? So, he is shot in the same room where the movie begins. People miss this part here. Okay? It's the heart of the city hotel. Watch it again, you'll see it. In room 303, which is where Trinity was under assault at the very beginning of the movie. So we've come full circle. Now, that number is very significant in Masonic terms, because 33 is the level or the degree of illuminated masonry. Okay, the 33rd degree. Because it's the degree of temperature when water begins to melt. It's frozen as a block of ice, meaning we are encased in ice. Our heart is not actually, we are not warm, or we have not thawed our negative emotions. Our care is not really flowing. But when we come up to the 33rd degree, the light of the sun, knowledge, okay, of the true self, has thawed it and has turned it back into water. Okay, so that's what 33 represents there. And I guarantee you that is no accident. He is shot and dies in the Matrix, in the world of illusion. Because the 33rd level in Freemasonry is also about death and rebirth. It is about resurrection to a new form of consciousness, to enlightened awareness, which is why it is called the first level of the illuminated degrees of Masonry. Okay? So that's what this part of it is. He is shot and killed, and he is now dead to the world of illusion. But now, this next scene, he is revived. He is resurrected and brought back to life by Trinity in an act of love. She kisses him and brings him back to life. This is representative that only true care and compassion can finally resurrect right action. That's it. She represents the sacred feminine energy of true care and compassion and love energy. And that's the only thing that can ultimately resurrect right action in the world, which is what Neo represents, our will. When he comes back to life, it is the most significant, is probably the most important part of the entire film. Because he says one word when he stands up after coming back from the dead. Okay, he says one word, and that word is no. No is the word that Neo speaks when he comes back to life. And this is suggestive that only when we begin to say no to the control system are we ever really going to really be reborn and really come back to life as a species. The agents of the system fire their guns at him, and he can now stop the bullets just by projecting his consciousness. And this is representative of, again, if we come up to that level of consciousness and say no, no bullets will have to be fired, ultimately. We'll be able to stop that eventuality, that negative future. So, the word no, I call it the most powerful word in the universe in my work. The concept of apophasis, A-P-O-P-H-A-S-I-S. Apophasis means to say no. It means to not speak, or to not acknowledge or give energy into the system. It is withdrawal. Withdrawal from what is wrong. And in withdrawing from what is wrong, we're ultimately doing what is right. So that's the most powerful energy. The lost word, it is called. And that's what we need to step into, that form of consciousness. When he wakes up, he can see the code of the matrix. He can see it for what it really is. He has new sight. He has new eyes. He is now really realizing the truth. And he can seemingly fight the control system now with a hand behind his back. It's becoming easier for him because he now can see the truth. So the illusion as it's projected at him now, he can strike it down at will. He actually lunges himself forward and projects himself like a missile at the center of Smith's being, the agent. And he goes into his body, and he blows him apart from the inside in a hail and a shower of light and green energy, which again represents care and love. And this is suggestive of, we need to get into the heart of the people who are actually still giving themselves over to this control system, the agents. We have to reach them ultimately, to change them, help to change them from the inside through care. And then we won't have to, like I said, have a hot revolution. A single bullet wouldn't have to be fired if enough people get to that level of consciousness and are willing to do that work. Therein lies the problem, that there doesn't seem to be enough people with that level of consciousness and who are also willing to engage that work. I keep telling people on my show, we are not going to change this reality unless we can reach the people who are still willing to give over their mind and body to this system of control. You have to change their mind. Actually has to be changed. And people need to be willing to do that work of influence and that work of reaching out to those people. Otherwise, forget it. It isn't going to happen. We're going to see a very dark and painful future if more of us don't wake up to that level and become willing to do that work. So, the movie ends with the phrase system failure, the control system coming down, the hope of it coming down anyway. And Neo says, I know that you're afraid. He's talking to the agents inside the Matrix now. I know you're afraid. You're afraid of us. You're afraid of change. I'm going to show all of these people what you don't want them to see. I'm going to show them a world without you. A world without control. Without boundaries. A world where anything is possible. And synchronistically, when he's saying the words where anything is possible, right after that, when this fades out, it zooms in to the M and the F, male and female, I would suggest. Okay? The masculine and feminine consciousness that is within us being bridged and brought together, and it opens as a doorway into another world. And that is how the first movie ends. Very powerful symbolism. Okay?
I know you're out there. I can feel you now. I know that you're afraid. You're afraid of us. You're afraid of change. I don't know the future. I didn't come here to tell you how this is going to end. I came here to tell you how it's going to begin. I'm going to hang up this phone, and then I'm going to show these people what you don't want them to see. I'm going to show them a world without you. A world without rules and controls, without borders or boundaries. A world where anything is possible. Where we go from there is a choice I leave to you.